Hey, so welcome back. This is the third video in our inequality and interval notation notes, and in this set of problems we want to identify and describe the errors in the intervals below, and then try to correct the error if possible. So we'll do example A here together. When I look at this interval, I've got a bracket on -4, which means that's included, a parentheses on -infinity, that's non-inclusive, but I notice that they're not in the correct order. Intervals have to go from least to greatest, and this one is going from greatest bound to least. So I've identified the error. Now I want to describe that error and correct it if possible. So in the box I write that intervals must be ordered from least to greatest, and then to correct that error I need to reverse the positions here so that my interval is beginning at -infinity and then ends at -4 inclusive. Okay, so I'd like you to pause the video and try B through G on your own in your notes, and then just turn the video back on and we'll go over the answers together when you're ready. Okay, so in example B, the interval notation and the inequality notation here has been mixed together. Right, we wouldn't write x is less than or equal to 7 and then also have brackets and parentheses around it. It's either one or the other. So I chose to go with the interval notation when I corrected it and wrote that interval as -infinity to 7 with the 7 inclusive because of the equal sign. Okay, in example C, this is two intervals, -infinity to 2 non-inclusive, or the 2 non-inclusive to 3 inclusive. So there's nothing wrong with the intervals themselves, right? They're going from least to greatest, both of them, and the -infinity, you know, is the parentheses. That all looks fine. The issue here is with writing the word or between them, right? Remember in the notes in example 2, we learned that you use a union symbol when joining two intervals. So on the number line, this interval would be going from -infinity up to the 2, but not including the 2. So there'd be an open circle there, and then the shading up to 3 with a closed circle at the 3. Okay, so that needed a union symbol between it. Okay, in example D, we have a -infinity to 0. The 0 is non-inclusive. It's least to greatest, but the error that we see here is that there's a bracket on -infinity. And remember in example 2, we said you can't ever land on -infinity on the number line and stand on it like an address, so it's it can't ever be inclusive. So we needed to use a parentheses on that -infinity to correct that error. Okay, example E, we have brackets -2, -3, and then a union, and then parentheses -4, -5. So this is all kinds of out of order. When you're writing intervals, whether it's a single interval or a union of intervals, the order always has to be from least to greatest the whole way across. So in order to correct that error, we need to start with the lowest possible bound on the number line, which is -5, and then -4, right, least to greatest for that interval. Then union, and we pick back up again at -3, and then up to and including -2 would be our second interval, with a union between them to join them up, so least to greatest. Okay, example F, we've got an issue here because there's a variable sitting in the middle. We don't include variables in interval notation, so this would just be written as bracket 0 to 4 with a parentheses. And then the last one, G, we've got another union of two intervals. This interval is -1 to 1. The second interval is 0 to 3. And at first glance, this doesn't seem like there's anything wrong with it because we are going from least to greatest, except here in the middle, right? We notice that the 0 is smaller than 1. So the outer bounds are okay, but there's something a little weird about the inner bounds. And if you make a little sketch for yourself of what this would look like on a number line, right, at -1, we would have an open circle. And then at +1, we'd have a closed circle with the shading in between. Okay, then 0 comes before 1, so here's our 0, that's also a closed circle, and then 3 has a bracket, and that's a closed circle, and we're shading between 0 and 3. And when you sketch that out, you can see now that the shading is continuous between -1 and 3. So this really is just one interval, right? It's not a union of two intervals. So this needs to be simplified so that there's no overlapping area there in the middle, and that would make it the interval -1 non-inclusive to 3 inclusive. Okay, so hopefully that helps with your error analysis practice. And then in the next video, we're going to take a look at some real-world intervals.